Go ahead.
All right, so we're going to take up where we left off. We're not going to take off. The wind's not that strong. A little bit stronger, we might end up in a place east of here called Coaldale. If it's really strong, we might end up in a place well east of here called Medicine Hat. Wonderful name. Very descriptive. So we've been looking at a little bit the last little while the legacy of Jihad, Islamic Holy War, and the fate of non-Muslims, edited by Andrew G. Boston, MD. The other day I said it was under the influence of something that Pauline had been dealing with. You mentioned Harvard, and I'd kept in mind that Boston was a professor at a Ivy League university, and I glitched on it. Is Brown University, not nearly as prestigious as Harvard University, located in the Boston area, Cambridge, Massachusetts, to be more specific. Brown University's Providence, Rhode Island. It's one of only 8 Ivy League universities in the United States, and by extension the world. And usually when you're seeing assessments of Ivy League universities or universities around the world, you'll see Harvard in the top 10, usually up near the top of the top 10, whereas Brown University, you'd have to say, would be, let's say, top 25 or stuff like that. So here's another book. This one's it's just said written by Andrew G. Boston, and it's Sharia versus Freedom, the legacy of Islamic totalitarianism. Is that an overstatement? Well, I prefer to let the sources do the talking. This is why the legacy of Jihad is far more important than Sharia versus Freedom, because it says that Andrew Boston edited it. So it's a collection of modern day reactions to some of the things that were written in the name of Islam and done in the name of Islam. But much more importantly, it is commentaries on what was said and done right from the beginning in the name of Islam by and the commentaries are by Muslim scholars, but most importantly, it has foundational documents translated into the English, foundational documents, stuff like from the Quran and or from the Hadith, and stuff from Sirah's biographies of Muhammad. Those 3 sources are considered generally amongst Muslims to be, I don't know if you'd say inspired, but they are something like gospel truth. So what I was dealing with before was the previous 2 sessions was the Ayatollah Khomeini's view of Islam, and he was saying Islam wanted to conquer the whole world. The other source said Islam grew with blood, on blood, and he bothered to repeat that. The first source was from 1942, and he basically hadn't changed his tune when it came to him recording the second source, 1979, over a generation, 10 years before he died. And believe me, hadn't changed his tune in the 10 years between 1979 and 1989, because one of the last things he ever did was put out the contract, i.e. fatwa, on Salman Rushdie's life. I think it was well over $1 million he put on poor Salman Rushdie's head. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a fairly violent sort of a thing to do. Now, we're going to talk about the interpretation of the Quran and stuff like that. And we're going to look at the 4 schools of Sunni Islamic jurisprudence. So we could argue, oh, okay, we're getting a Shiite view when we're dealing with the Ayatollah. The Sunnis, wow, I mean, they've got to be peaceful, right? Because we've been told by any number of folks, I'm trying to come up with nice neutral terms, folks, we'll see, that Islam is peace. Peace. It's all about peace, love, and flowers. No, not necessarily about love and flowers, but we're told it's all about peace. We're told by many people who don't understand Arabic and linguistic derivation that Islam means peace. No, it doesn't. Pacification doesn't mean peace. It's derived from pax, which means peace. But pacification can be done in very unpeaceful manners, in very unpeaceful ways. And what Islam means is submission or surrender. You can get surrender or submission from people in very unpeaceful ways. And we'll see how there's 4 schools of Sunni Islamic jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, what is that? It's basically an interpretation of law and the application too. So these 4 schools are Maliki, Hanbali, Hanafi, and Shafi'i. Okay? So there's 4 of them. Now surely they're going to, at least one of them is going to talk about things being peaceful. Now understand, in the Quran it's made very clear, and it's not an abrogated passage, and it's a long passage, that when Muslim lands or interests are attacked, every Muslim has to defend those lands or interests. Everyone, men, women, children, the infirm, i.e. the sick or the injured, everyone. But that's defensive war. And then he goes on, Muhammad does, or the Quran does, to say that there's another type of war that's enjoined, it's required, in other words, on every able-bodied male, full grown. Uh-oh. When we look at the set of war, and then we cut it up, and we say defensive war, what's left? It's like flipping a coin. Except every so occasionally, apparently, sometimes you can get coins that stand on end. You don't get that. You don't get that little luxury when you're cutting up types of war and you say defensive war. There's not defensive, offensive war.
Oh, and also you should point out the who is considered to be an adult male.
Oh yeah, I gather it's something like when the secondary sex characteristics come in. You know, like yeah.
So I mean, just because a lot of the time you'll hear about things on the news and about soldiers killing children or something, you know.
Or they'll have stones thrown at them, and they're Jewish soldiers by what are characterized as Palestinian children, Muslim children, Arabic children, not Palestinian. Eh? If it's in the Gaza Strip, it's Palestinians. Palestinian means Philistine. Palestine, according to, not the Bible, according to the Assyrians, ancient Assyrians, this was roughly 700 BC, they called it Palashtu. That's a Gaza Strip, okay? You know what, you wouldn't know, what Arabs call Palestinians, something like Palestine Okay? Get that straight.
But in our culture, I mean, we consider males to be adults when they're 18.
Yeah.
And
But
male and females to be adults when they're 18. But that's not the same in all cultures around the world. And so it's I don't know if reporters are meaning to be misleading when they report.
yeah, they're just ignorant. They don't understand. They don't care to understand. They're over there.
About
they're
other
supposed to be
people's cultures,
specializing.
you know,
they don't.
So they haven't looked into it,
Yeah,
right?
they don't care about these cultures. They think they care about the people. Oh, we care about the people, but they don't care enough to actually find out about the cultures that these people are embedded in. They might be embedded. The journalists. So here we've got selections from, and these are typical interpretations of the Quran. So I was mentioning, you know, that there's these two types of warfare, and they're not abrogated. Abrogated means they're not eliminated by a later revelation to Muhammad. They are current. Muhammad's the seal of the prophets. No prophet, no one coming after him can gainsay what he has put down and hasn't had abrogated. He actually talks about abrogation. He says, I've received a revelation from God that eliminates a previous revelation. That's abrogation. He talks about it, right? But these passages aren't abrogated. There are two types of warfare. One is enjoined as defensive, and it's enjoined on every Muslim. The other is enjoined on adult males, and that would be someone who's gone into puberty and older, adult, healthy males. And that one is, what's the opposite of defensive? It's your only alternative. I'm not going to tell you. And here are the interpretations. They cannot mess around with that. Are these bad guys? Well, according to Muslim jurisprudence, they're not. What they're doing is they're just taking what's in the Quran and laying it out for the believers. Okay. And I'm laying it out for you unbelievers. What was that?
I was wondering. It just dawned on me. You know the pictures of Hitler sending children off to war, patting them on the heads. Go off and die.
They're no younger than the folks that would be considered males, according to the traditional interpretation. Adult males, according to the traditional Muslim interpretation. Okay?
Yeah, but...
And it is gruesome to see these pictures of Hitler patting them on the head. This is for the defense of Berlin.
But did adult males from Canada, and I guess, well, my grandpa fought in Italy, so maybe not, but did people who were fighting the Germans, did they have to kill those little kids then?
I don't think they'd go out and intentionally try to, but if they're shooting at you, you've got to protect yourself.
Yeah, I imagine, but gosh, that's terrible to think about, isn't it?
It'd be awful to be stuck in that situation where you're having to do it.
Yeah.
And there the Jewish soldiers are having stones thrown at them, and the whole world is watching, but they're not understanding. Are you ready to get some understanding, folks? I know you're not. And here you go. Some of you, of course, are, like open. You've got open minds. But most of you aren't. You're useless fake left-wingers. But here you go. So this is a Maliki jurist. Al-Qayrawani. Excuse my pronunciation. Jihad means struggle, but it means basically jihad, struggle in the way of Allah, and it's used parallel in the Quran with something that occurs as almost as much, if not more, fighting in the way of Allah. Okay, jihad is a precept of divine institutions set up by God. Its performance by certain individuals may dispense others from it. Well, that's a little bit different from what Muhammad says. So he says some people can do it and make it so that others don't have to do it. We Malikis, so there he's presenting himself as a Maliki jurist. There are the 4 schools of jurisprudence, and he's saying we Malikis, that's one of them, right? One of the 4 schools of Muslim jurisprudence, that's in brackets, maintain that it is preferable not to begin hostilities. Wow, that's sounding pacific. You're just waiting for other people to attack you, right? But, there's more. There's always more, isn't there? It is preferable not to begin hostilities with the enemy before having invited the latter to embrace the religion of Allah, except where the enemy attacks first. In other words, when it's defensive war, you don't have to invite them to embrace Islam. In other words, surrender or submit. But if you have, you see how that is made very clear. You don't have to invite them to convert if they attack you. I mean, you got to move fast. So that leaves only one possibility. They haven't attacked first. And here's what you do. Before you begin hostilities, you invite with the enemy, invite the latter to embrace the religion of Allah. You can't work your way around the wording. There's the 2 types of warfare. One, they attack you and you don't have to invite them. If they don't attack you, then you do have to invite them. But it's okay to attack them. Okay? They have the alternative of either, that's after they've been invited, of either converting to Islam or paying the poll tax. Jizya is the Arabic for that. Short of which, war will be declared against them. Whoa! That's just talking about offensive warfare, and it's what they're faced with. It doesn't mention the third possibility, but basically they're supposed to either convert to Islam or submit to paying a variety of different taxes. But the main one is a poll tax, jizya. Eh? And the third thing is you get attacked. And when you get attacked, if you're an adult male, the idea is you get whacked. If you're a female or a kid, you get turned into a slave. The female, if she's attractive enough, would be a sex slave. So Ibn Taymiyyah, and excuse the pronunciation, 1328. Incidentally, Qayrawani is roughly 996, a long time ago. This is not recent. This doesn't have to do with reactions to colonialism or stuff like that. Get that straight. The colonialists, the imperialists, were the Muslims at that point in time. You understand? No, you don't, but try. No, you don't want to try, do you? Anyway, 1328, Hanbali jurist. Okay? So this is the second of the 4 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence. Since lawful warfare is essentially jihad, so you'll get all sorts of people say, jihad's just struggle. You can't interpret it as holy war. You can't Since lawful warfare is essentially jihad, jihad is warfare. It's other things too, but when you run across it, it's warfare. It's right here. Since lawful warfare is essentially jihad, and since its aim is that the religion is God's entirely, and God's word is uppermost, in other words, there's no room for other religions. And there's no, like it's on top of, God's word is on top of everything else, okay? Therefore, according to all Muslims, those who stand in the way of this aim, that is, religion being God's entirely, and God's word is uppermost. According to all Muslims, those who stand in the way of this aim must be fought. That's not attacking Muslims, that's standing in the way of Islam, controlling the whole world. It says right here, must be fought. Yeah. As for those who cannot offer resistance or cannot fight, such as women, children, monks, old people, the blind, handicapped, and their likes, they shall not be killed unless they actually... Okay, so this is talking about the enemies. It's a poorly constructed passage if the translation is any indication. So as for those who cannot offer resistance, cannot fight, such as women, children, monks, so it's Christians, right, in that case, old people, the blind, handicapped, and their likes, they shall not be killed unless they actually fight with words, i.e., for example, by propaganda. So they can't even yip and yap about what's happening. Or else they'll be, killed. And acts, i.e. by spying or otherwise assisting in the warfare. So if the Muslims figure out that some of these youngsters or women or monks or old folks are helping out a little bit, they can whack them. What? Okay, so this is from primarily, this is in brackets, the Hanafi school, as given in the Hidayah of Shaykh Burhanuddin Ali of Marganan. Excuse the pronunciations. This is circa 1196 AD. It is not lawful to... So this is the third of the four schools of jurisprudence in Islam. It is not lawful to make war upon any people who have never before been called to the faith. In other words, convert or else. Never before been called to the faith, without previously requiring them to embrace it. So you've heard this before in one of the previous passages. Because the Prophet so instructed his commanders. See, they're following Muhammad's example. He was telling his commanders, Muhammad was, to invite the enemy to convert, or else. That was understood. Directing them to call the infidels to the faith, and also because the people will hence perceive that they are attacked for the sake of religion, and not for the sake of taking their property or making slaves of their children. So it's offensive warfare, and the enemy is invited to convert, and here it's made clear that it's so the enemy understands when if they're attacked, that they're not being attacked for their property or to be made slaves. In other words, for their property as an individual. It's to spread the religion. It is to spread the religion. So people go around saying, Islam spread. It was like in the New World, like people were just, when the Europeans moved in there, they just wanted land and they just wanted to get some slaves and stuff. No, it's made perfectly clear. These conquests, at least according to this school, is to spread the religion. The getting land and the slaves, well, that's just the icing on the cake. It's the cake that's important. Of course, it was a major league, I'm pretty sure, motivating influence for the nomadic Arabs. Hey, we can get some land. It's a whole lot better than the middle of Saudi Arabia, and we can get some slaves, so we don't have to work. We're pretty lazy already, but now all we do is we get the women to work hard, and our kids kind of herds, and our herds do the job first. And then, speaking of women, we can get lots of sexy slaves. Because the people will hence perceive that they are attacked for the sake of religion, and not for the sake of taking their property or making slaves of their children. And on this consideration, it's possible that they may be induced to agree to the call, in other words, to surrender, to convert, in order to save themselves from the troubles of war. Troubles, no kidding. When you are fighting with the Muslim armies, you are in real trouble. Because up until modern times, you basically lost. And if you're adult male, you basically lose your life. And if you weren't, you'd basically lose your freedom.
If the infidels, upon receiving the call, neither consent to it nor agree to pay capitation,
That'd be a poll tax. Poll tax is a head tax. Okay?
capitation, then it is incumbent,
It's required.
on the Muslims to call upon God for assistance.
Any respecting God would not support offensive warfare. That's all I got to say. Any God that I respect would tell people if they were called on for assistance to take innocent people and wage war on them, would just tell them to get lost.
But call on God for assistance and to make war upon them, because God is the assistant
Of those who serve him. They're serving him by invading, waging war on innocent people just because they're infidels. They don't believe in Islam.
For God is the assistant of those who serve him and the destroyer of his enemies.
Infidels don't care about Islam. They're not Allah's enemies. They don't care about him. There's a difference. But Islam doesn't seem to understand that. It's all or nothing.
So, the destroyer of his enemies,
The infidels, the people who don't believe, they're enemies somehow.
and it is necessary to implore his aid, that's God's aid, upon every occasion. The Prophet, moreover,
Commands us to do so. Did he? Absolutely. It's there in the Quran. It's written in black and white. I've explained to you what passage it is, and you can look it up if you care to. You don't care to, do you?
Okay, so here's Al-Mawardi, Shafi'i jurist.
This is 1058. He died 1058 AD. 1058 AD. So this is the fourth school. This is the one, the Shafi'i, that requires women to be genitally mutilated, girls to be mutilated. Cutting, as you slimy fake left-wingers prefer to say. That's called euphemism, and it's one of the slimiest euphemisms you could ever come up with. Cutting.
Okay, so this is the fourth school, okay?
The mushrikin, what is that? You guys know? You care? Infidels. Of Dar al-Harb, do you know? Congratulations. You live in the Dar al-Harb if you're not a Muslim and you don't live in a Muslim country. You live in the Dar al-Harb. I want to write a book called that. Congratulations. You live in the Dar al-Harb. What is that? It's the opposite of Dar al-Islam. What is that? That's a house of Islam. That's the house of surrender or submission. So what's the Dar al-Harb? Oh, the house of battle. Or here it's interpreted as the arena of battle. You live in the arena of battle. And you are a legitimate aim, your land and you, because you are an infidel. And your land is a land of battle. It's a house of battle because you have not submitted. You haven't surrendered.
So the